Greetings, music lovers. Rick Ferguson, rickfergusonmusic.com. Thank you for joining me in this video, which I'm entitling Alexander Scriabin, The Mystic Chord and Poem of Fire. In a separate video, I have explored Beethoven's work with the Prometheus myth from a ballet perspective, whereas Beethoven used the Prometheus myth as a vehicle really to further Age of Enlightenment ideals about bringing science and the arts to humanity to assist in alleviating ignorance and suffering, really enlightening humanity. Scriabin, I think in his own way, has his own altruistic goals in mind, perhaps from a slightly more ego-driven place. Scriabin really used the Prometheus myth as an important stepping stone toward the creation of what he termed a philosophical opera, which he entitled Mysterium, which would really be the culmination of his life's work and his own mission as a composer, as an artist, as a creative person. Mysterium leading, in Scriabin's estimation, to the redemption of humanity through a symphony of, it's a mixture of sound, light, scent, poetry, dance, color, really bringing the listener, anyone who experienced this work, to a rather ecstatic state. And, you know, his mystic chord, which he created, was the primary compositional tool that Scriabin developed, which really reflected his own philosophical interest and beliefs during this period of time. So let's go over this timeline that led to the creation of Poem of Fire and then what occurred thereafter. Alexander Scriabin, born in 1872, died in 1915. The year 1902 was particularly significant in Scriabin's evolution as a composer. It began a period of rather intense exploration of philosophical and mystically oriented thoughts and writings, especially the writings of German philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche. And Scriabin really came to see himself as somewhat of a Superman figure that Nietzsche describes. And Scriabin began to see his role, so he thought, to assist in bringing about the transformation of humanity through music and the synthesis of other art forms as well. So in 1903, Scriabin begins to sketch out some preliminary ideas for this philosophical opera, for Mysterium. And so he really sets to work on this almost at the beginnings of his quest for more knowledge and to perhaps understand his place in the world. In 1905, Scriabin becomes immersed in theosophical writings, these teachings by the Theosophical Society. Theosophical Society having been formed in New York City in 1875 by Helena Blavatsky, Colonel Henry Still Alcott, William Quan Judge, and about 16 other people initially. In particular, for Scriabin, the teachings centered on what were called the intelligent evolution of all existence really seemed to resonate with Scriabin, that humanity's evolution on Earth and perhaps beyond is part of the overall cosmic universal evolution of life, its ultimate objective being the attainment of perfection and the conscious willing participation in this evolutionary process. So this is pretty heavy philosophical thinking. 1905, from a composition standpoint, saw the creation of Scriabin's Fifth Piano Sonata. I love his Fifth Sonata. It is one of the last of Scriabin's compositions where he actually indicated a key signature, and his poem of Ecstasy came at about the same time, and these were efforts that he was making along his own compositional path to incorporate a lot of these spiritual concepts that he was processing at this time. Scriabin wrote a 300-line poem to accompany this poem of ecstasy, this orchestral tone poem that's sometimes referred to as his Fourth Symphony. And he places an epitaph drawn from this poem of ecstasy in his Fifth Sonata. And I wanted to share this with you because I think it's really very, it communicates a lot about where Scriabin is creatively at this point. So this epitaph reads, "I call you to life, O mysterious forces, drowned in the obscure depths of the creative spirit, timid shadows of life. To you I bring audacity." And, if you listen to his Fifth Sonata, you'll hear like so much color and so much vibrance in the sounds that he is working with. I have actually linked a performance of the Fifth Piano Sonata of Scriabin in the comments section, and this is actually a performance by Scriabin's son-in-law, Vladimir Safraninsky. And I think it's a lovely recording. I really enjoy this recording very much. There are lots of wonderful recordings, but I thought you might find this particular one to be of interest simply because of the obvious closeness between Scriabin and Safraninsky. So I hope you enjoy that. It's a wonderful listen. Moving forward to 1907, Scriabin has a series of discussions with the Russian composer Nikolai Rimsky-Korsakov, and the discussions were around this idea of synthesis of color with musical sound. And apparently, both Rimsky-Korsakov and Scriabin suffered from synesthesia, which is this fascinating, I don't even think ailment is necessarily the right word for this, but oftentimes when one of our senses is stimulated, well, then another will be stimulated as well. In this case, with both Scriabin and Rimsky-Korsakov, the synesthesia manifested in terms of when they heard a musical pitch, they would then connect that with the particular color. And so it was this connection of color and sound, musical sound, that they were discussing at this time. I want to listen to a recording of Scriabin playing one of his short piano pieces written in 1907. It's from his Opus 52, the second piece, Enigma. And this is where Scriabin begins to really explore, almost as a sketch, his use of the mystic chord. He wasn't completely using it at this time, but he had developed it, and I love this short piece. I love all three pieces in the Opus 52, but this is from one of the old piano roll recordings. So this is a brief recording of Scriabin playing Enigma, second piece, Opus 52, written in 1907, and thank you so much for Scriabin Topic for making these Welt Mignon piano roll recordings available to all of us. And please go and like their page because they got a lot of great content. So enjoy. So that was Scriabin playing. Just what a wonderful pianist. In 1908, his tone poem of Ecstasy was premiered in New York City on December 10th. After that, Scriabin turned his attention to the Prometheus myth, to Poem of Fire. And this was the first major work of his that really was completely dedicated to the use of the mystic chord. So let's hear just the sound of the mystic chord. I've gone into this in a little bit of detail in another video about Scriabin and the mystic chord, so you can certainly go view that. But I think we should have a little refresher as far as the sound of the mystic chord is concerned. So whether he's working in vertically chordal format like this, or voicing the chord like that, or voicings like this, or he's simply working melodically with notes from the scale that he's basing this on, I think at one point Scriabin simply realized that differentiating between individual melodic sounds and more vertically stacked chords, in a way it's sort of irrelevant. And here's a quote that I find to be rather interesting. So as far as how Scriabin incorporated the mystic chord into his music, he seems to have made, just as I said, very little distinction between melodic and harmonic usage. Scriabin is quoted as saying, "The melody is dissolved harmony. The harmony is vertically compressed melody." I find that to be really very telling and also true, and I listen to a lot of his music from this time period, especially like 1908 until the end of his life in 1915. Prometheus Poem of Fire was premiered in Moscow on March 2nd, 1911. Musicologist and music critic Leonid Sabaev first referred to Scriabin's tonal system as the Prometheus chord, not the mystic chord, but the Prometheus chord. And he later created, actually, Sabaev did a two-piano version of it, and it's great. You might want to go look for that because it's very creative. Apparently, Scriabin was sort of initially skeptical, saying, well, you know, you would need at least 4 pianists to play this, but Sabaev was able to create a really nice reduction and scription of Poem of Fire using 2 pianists at 2 pianos. This work is only loosely based on the Prometheus myth. Perhaps it's more of an exploration of the element of fire, especially fire being used as a transformative agent, which is certainly in keeping with a lot of the theosophical ideas that Scriabin was espousing at this time. This idea of fire as spiritual analogy serving to facilitate humanity's evolution also resurfaced in Scriabin's piano piece, which he wrote at the end of his life, Vers la Flamme, his opus 72, and may well also have been a component of Mysterium, you know, had Scriabin lived to really complete it. I have linked a performance in the comments section here of Vers la Flamme by Vladimir Horowitz. And Horowitz talks a little bit about this piece and his take on it as well. And, you know, Horowitz was such a champion of Scriabin's music. And did you know that Horowitz's uncle, Alexander, was a piano student of Scriabin's, and their families were actually quite close to each other. So that's a great connection between those two. And there are also some fabulous performances to enjoy by many pianists, but this particular performance of Horowitz has a lot of like personal meaning for me. I think it's absolutely wonderful. So in terms of Poem of Fire, Prometheus is scored for piano, orchestra, optional choir, and color keyboard, or cremola, which was a rather rudimentary but I think effective color organ, color keyboard invented by Preston Millar. And this color keyboard was not initially used in the Moscow premiere. It was first used at a performance in Carnegie Hall on March 21st, 1915. And that 1915 performance was conducted by a school classmate of Scriabin's, Modest Altschuler. So that's a wonderful connection. I want to talk a little bit about this color keyboard. The color organ part was notated on its own staff, and it's actually in 2 parts. It's 2-part writing for this color keyboard. It's essentially playing the root notes of any harmonies that are being used, and so the color And that's where we get back to this whole synesthesia concept. The color is happening alongside the root note of the prevailing harmony. And this was very subjective from Scriabin's point of view. This is just whatever Scriabin himself associated with these harmonies. And then there was a second part that had longer held notes that would sometimes be held as a color for a couple of minutes, several pages in the score. And these long held colors would progress through the scale that Scriabin was working with, slowly ascending through the course of the piece. And I love that imagery. I love that idea that in the background, very subtly, you have this ascent of color sort of leading you from the beginning of the piece through to the end of the piece, which just sort of ends, of all things, on a C major chord when you get to the end. So Scriabin really doesn't indicate so much in the score how the two colors are to be used. Are we supposed to use two different color keyboards? Should the colors be projected onto a screen, as has been done? Or should they be projected onto the walls of the performance space? So Scriabin doesn't really give any clear indication about that, and it's been done in numerous ways. I've included a link here again in the comment section to a performance of Prometheus conducted by Pierre Boulez with the Chicago Symphony and pianist Anatol Ugorsky. It was released in 1999 on the Deutsche Grammophon label, and I really love this recording. There's also another fabulous recording with Marta Argerich. And, you know, the piano part in Prometheus is just absolutely captivating. So really, from this point, Prometheus moving forward, every composition, no matter how large or small, and regardless of the medium, was really designed to lead ultimately to the creation of Mysterium. And it was left unfinished at the time of Scriabin's death in 1915 because it was such an unexpected and untimely death. And, you know, he was so young. Scriabin at that time had left about 72 pages of sketch material for a prelude that he called Prefatory Action. And Alexander Nimton spent 28 years really reforming and working with this material into a 3-hour work, Preparation for the Final Mystery. And I'm going to link to a 1973 performance of that Preparation for the Final Mystery conducted by Kirill Kondrashin, and this will be the prelude part 1. I thought you might find this to be interesting. So there's a wealth of material out there about this particular use of the Prometheus myth, but I thought that you would find these performances to be captivating. They're a wonderful listen. I would suggest that you think about listening to these pieces in the order in which I'm describing them, and you'll, I think, really hear the evolutionary process that Scriabin was undergoing during this time period. And really, we're talking 1902 to 1915, this specific period, and such an incredible body of work. So enjoy. If you found this to be of interest, please feel free to share. Press the like button, and if you haven't yet subscribed to my channel, please feel free to do so. I would love to have you here. So thank you so much. Enjoy. Take care. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.